Hello and welcome back to Garden and Allotment Tips podcast with Gardening with Ben. Well, spring has finally sprung and the weather is absolutely glorious. You wouldn't think it's spring, you'd think it was summer with how warm it actually is at the moment. 17 degrees it got to in Sheffield today, and wow, has it turned nice. But the thing is, the weather could change, so be careful all the time. Don't just second guess that it's going to stay like this all summer, well, all spring, because it might not do. You never know the UK weather, we might get snow next week. That's how drastic it can change pretty much fastly. So yeah, but there is some things that we can be sowing at this time of year outside in the garden. So we're going to be looking at some of those over the coming days. And today we're going to be looking at planting onions. Yes, now is the time to be planting those onions. Now, you can either grow onions as sets, which are onions what have been started already. They're usually quite sizable bulbs, what you can buy usually in a bag of around 50 for a decent price. And or you can start onions from seed. Now, if you're starting onions from seed, you'd usually start them around January, February time, and then you'd be planting them out around now. So we've started ours from seed, so we started them off in January, but we will be planting them out in the next week or so. So I'm looking forward to that. I once grew onions, didn't comparison, I grew them from sets and I grew them from seed, and I grew them at the side of one another to see which ones did best. And the ones from seed just did that little bit better than the ones that grew from sets. So I've stuck to seed this year, and I'm growing a few different varieties to see how we actually get on with them and see if they grow well and we get a sizable amount of onions from them. Hopefully we will, but we'll see how we get on. If we get nice weather, excellent, we'll get some nice sized onions. But they do take a lot of caring of planting onions. Now, if you're growing onions from sets, you can either start them off in the greenhouse first, and by meaning starting them off in the greenhouse, you get like a seed tray, and you just plant them on top of the soil and water them in, and they'll start sending the shoots out and they'll start growing. Starting them off in the greenhouse gives them that extra bit of warmth to get growing, and then when they've got a good sized shoot on them, then you can plant them out in the allotment or in the garden. But when you're planting them out in the garden, don't think, oh, I can squeeze a lot in on that row. Make sure you leave plenty of space in between. The reason for this is because you need to get in there and get weeding them and get hoeing them, and be careful when you're hoeing them that you don't disrupt the roots on the onions. Onions do not like the roots disturbing, and they do not like competing against the weeds. So you need to make sure you keep them really, really weed free. And even if it's just going around every couple of days, pinching out any weeds that is popping through and keeping on top of them that way. If you manage to do that every couple of days, then you'll stay on top of it and no weeds will take over your onion bed. Now, there used to be somebody on our allotment, and their onion bed was absolutely pristine. He used to go around every day and hoe around it, and he got some massive size onions on his allotment. So I've learnt a lot from him, and that is why I know that you need to keep them weed free. Now, I've seen some people plant the onions through black membrane, create a hole in the black membrane to keep the weeds down, and also planting them through black membrane, it keeps the ground moist, and onions like damp ground because it helps them grow bigger and swell. So it swings and roundabouts on what you want to do. It might be worth off trying growing them through black membrane and seeing how you get on. And then one year my dad put grass cuttings around his, and he got some really massive sized onions from doing that because it mulched the ground and all the food and the vitamins went into the onions, and it created some massive onions. So there's plenty of ways of growing onions, and it all works out the same way in the end. But when you're planting your onions from sets or from seeds, make sure you net them over. The reason for this is because there's not much growing at this time of year, and pigeons will love anything. And what they will do is, if they see a green shoot coming up out of an onion set, they'll swoop down, they will pull them up, and they'll bite the tops off the onions. And then you've damaged your onion bulb, and you possibly could lose it. And you don't want to do that whatsoever. So when you're growing your onions, make sure that you do look after them and give them the love and attention they need. You might think that they don't need much attention, but they certainly do. They require looking after them and keeping that soil absolutely pristine and making sure not one single root grows, and just keeping them watered every so often as well, because obviously, like I said, the water helps them swell, and obviously you don't want to water them so much so that they grow rotten, and you've just got to be careful with the watering patterns because they can grow to seed as well. So make sure you have a read up on that and see how to look after them. And if you do notice them starting to go to seed, which means usually they start to send a flower up from the green shoot at the top, cut it off at the top and I'd harvest it, and that's probably the end of the onion growing. You often know that the onions are ready for picking is when the green tops on the top of the onion start to flap over and collapse. That is usually when the onions are usually ready for picking. And they usually store quite well as well, onions. What my dad tends to do is he just tends to hang them up in the shed, and they just dry out nicely in there. And then as and when they need them, they can just use them. And they grow enough just to last them all the way through winter. And we used to donate quite a lot to our local church, and they used to make French onion soup, which is absolutely delicious. I've never tried making soups in my life. I might need to start looking into doing it and getting myself a proper soup maker, because I do want to start using my fruit and vegetables more. And last year I gave a lot of it away, but I need to start using it more and saving my money really. I grow all this fruit and veg, but I don't tend to use it all, which is a real shame. I just tend to give most of it away, so I really do need to start learning how to cook and how to make use of the produce and seeing if we can get some decent crops from it. So yeah, this year is going to be a bumpy year for me on the allotment. Like I said, I've got a few different varieties of onions to try and grow what I'm growing from seed in my shed at the moment. So I may plant them tomorrow, we'll see. It's going to be a warm day tomorrow, so we want a day when the ground's really quite soft to sow them in. But yeah, we'll see how we get on. I hope to get them in the next couple of weeks, and as well I'll be getting my potatoes in, so we'll be talking about that in another podcast. And we'll be talking about broad beans, because broad beans can be planted now, and we'll be talking about planting peas as well. So make sure you stay tuned for those episodes. And the way you'll find out about them episodes is if you click that subscribe button to stay up to date with all our podcasts. And if you've not checked out my main podcast channel, it's called Gardening with Ben. Now, I've been doing that one for over a year now, so there's about 160 episodes on there for you to listen to. So if you've not discovered it yet, you've got absolutely loads of episodes on there to listen to. And I can tell when somebody's just found it one day, and you can tell that they've listening to all the episodes on there, which is fantastic. I really do appreciate all the followers and all the listens that I do get. It does make my day. And yeah, I'm at like 94 subscribers on this podcast channel now on Spotify. So if you've not clicked that subscribe button, let's get it to 100 and see if I can get to 100 subscribers by the end of the month. So thanks for listening to today's podcast, everybody. As always, remember, keep smiling, keep gardening, and keep listening to Gardening with Ben's podcast.